Fearsome D&D monsters come in many forms. Let's take a look at the top 10 scariest monsters you can find in D&D and what makes them send a chill down our spine. But first, click that subscribe button to help us grow the channel and bring you more great content. Introduced in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, the Boneless are animated flesh of undead creatures that lack, well, bones. These things don't hit very hard and they're not really all that dangerous, but danger within the game mechanics isn't necessarily what makes a monster scary. Being only flaps of flesh, Boneless can squeeze through the tiniest gaps and crevices, making them difficult to keep out or escape from. You can't just shut the door on these things and expect them to go away. Once the Boneless find their prey, they can grapple and squeeze and cut off that prey's air supply. For low constitution and strength characters, this sort of thing can get deadly really quickly, no matter what level they are, especially if they're separated from stronger characters that would be able to help them get these things off. The real terror and fun of the Boneless begins when your DM starts to use them creatively. Imagine storming a necromancer's lair and coming face to face with zombies. No big deal, you think? Only these zombies peel their flesh off like they're freaking Pyramid Head from Silent Hill, and they throw it at you. They're really skeletons, and their skin are really boneless that grapple you, blind you, and start suffocating you. And while all this is going on, the skeletons are still just trying to stab you to death. Or, one more, the party beds down at an inn for the night, only to find out that the bearskin blankets on their beds are actually boneless in disguise that start suffocating them in their sleep. Boneless. They're like mimics, but for the weird, quiet kids. Some children have imaginary friends that their parents can't see. Sometimes those invisible friends aren't imaginary. A Skulk is a semi-invisible creature that can only be seen by children under 10 or by those who look at it through a reflection or with a candle that's made from rendered fat of an unknown corpse. The Skulk is great for low-level adventures that are filled with mystery and dread. Imagine a family whose children all suddenly get imaginary friends, ones who really don't want to leave. The adults keep seeing something in reflections, but when they turn around, there's nothing there, just their kids. But weird things are happening. Things are being moved around when nobody's looking, and there's things that are going bump in the night when there shouldn't be. Things take a turn when the imaginary friends start playing rough. Unexplained bruises start showing up on the kids, finger marks, that sort of thing. And that's where your party comes in. The kids aren't having fun with their imaginary friends anymore, and nobody thinks that this is a game, except for maybe the youngest one. And it's the youngest one that goes missing in the night, lured away by that imaginary friend of theirs. Only by looking at reflections or through the light of a special candle can your party track the Skulks and find the missing child. Hopefully they can do it before it's too late. On a list of the scariest monsters in D&D, the Gibbering Mouther is a must. It's like the free space on a bingo board. This thing is just a moving pile of melted body parts and mouths that wail, moan, scream, and of course, gibber. This prime specimen of body horror is driven to consume any living flesh nearby. It pulls itself towards its prey by latching its many mouths onto the ground and pulling itself forward. The gibbering cacophony of its mouths terrifies and transfixes its prey, holding them in place while it slowly oozes over them. Its mouths bite, gnaw, gnash, and tear its prey to bits. All the while, the oozy bulk of its frame dissolves the creature that it's covering. I can't really think of a more painful or horrifying way to die. The real horror comes in when your party encounters a Mouther that's halfway through devouring somebody. If you get really gross with it, the visceral descriptions that accompany such a sight can be enough to turn even the most stalwart player's stomach. Before we get on with that next monster, I need to tell you about a little boy that needs your help. He's not sick or hurt or anything, so don't get too worried. This is usually where I tell you about my Patreon or my latest Lunch Break Heroes project, but this isn't about me, it's about my son Rory. You see, Rory loves racing. Every weekend from April to August, he's behind the wheel of one of our 3 quarter-midget race cars, going head-to-head with other kids around an oval track that's 1/20th of a mile long. He loves to race, he loves to go fast, and he loves to win. But to do all of that, His race cars need to be in tip-top shape. Crashes happen, parts wear out, engines need tuning. And that's where I'd like you to consider helping us out. I've set up a new Patreon just for Rory and his racing, which you can find over at patreon.com/Ram Racing. I'll be posting updates on our cars, our races, and whatever else you think might be interesting. So if you like racing or just helping kids out, head on over there, check it out, and please consider helping Rory achieve his racing dreams. That being said, let's talk about our next scary monster. Star-spawn emissaries are the, quote, fingers of alien realms, digits that tip the scales of reality toward terror, end quote. They're projections into our reality from an incomprehensibly malign place, and they're hell-bent on making our world fit for their own designs. They're the harbingers and architects of pain and destruction on a global scale. Imagine if Damien from The Omen was a horrifying cosmic being and not the devil's son. This thing can take on the form of whatever creature it wants to make its way through society and carry out its orders. The more mundane the form, the better to infiltrate with. This cosmic horror is terrifying from both a lore perspective and a mechanics perspective. When its cover is blown, the star-spawn emissary reveals the first of its true forms. This is a, quote, roughly bipedal mass of agitated organs, self-cannibalizing alien orifices, and appendages suggestive of forms that it has previously assumed, end quote. Imagine a 10-year-old little girl in pigtails transforming into that. This CR-19 creature's got 241 hit points, an AC of 19, a movement and fly speed of 40 feet, bonkers saving throws and skill bonuses, and it can kick out an average of 141 points of damage in a round. And if that's not bad enough, let's say you do manage to defeat it. Your tired and spent party will witness this creature dissolve into a puddle of goo that immediately reforms into a, quote, 25-foot-tall pillar of violent flesh amalgamating the meat and voices of every form the emissary has ever mimicked, end quote. This form is CR-21, has 290 hit points, does even more damage, and spawns a Gibbering Mouther for every opponent that can't make a DC 23 dexterity save against its unearthly bile attack, which does 55 damage in and of itself. So yeah, bit of a world-ending threat right there. If the prospect of facing something like that doesn't scare the bejesus out of you, go see a therapist. You've probably already heard of these guys. These things are gross. They're tiny, worm-like creatures that infest corpses. They're usually found in places where death and decay are common, such as graveyards, tombs, and dungeons. But it's not just dead flesh that they're after. If a character comes into contact with a rot grub, the grub can burrow into the character's flesh and begin to eat their way through the body, killing the character if left unchecked. The only way to remove rot grubs is to burn them out with fire right after they make contact, or to use magic that can remove a disease, like Lesser Restoration. These things can quickly kill even the hardiest of adventurers if they aren't burned out within seconds of burrowing under a character's skin. They deal 1d6 damage every round, that's every 6 seconds, until their host is either cured with magic or the host dies when the grub burrows into their heart. If you're a low-level character with not a lot of hit points, these things can take you out pretty darn quickly for only being a CR 1/2 creature. So if you needed any further arguments against chainmail bikinis and carrying torches, but I have dark vision, rot grubs are it. Doppelgangers are a species of faceless and featureless telepathic humanoid creatures who can take on the shape of any small or medium creature that they've seen before. Much like the famous Robert Zemeckis horror film The Polar Express, doppelgangers tap into our fear of things that live in the uncanny valley, beings that look human but something's just a little off. If you want to instill a feeling of paranoia in your players, doppelgangers are a great tool in your arsenal. Let the party encounter a doppelganger early in the adventure. Maybe they kill a bunch of bandits on the road and one of them turns out to be a doppelganger. This plants a little seed in their mind that these things exist here and that there may be more than one. Then, contrive for your party to split up. Maybe it's a shopping day in town or just a night at the inn where everybody has their own rooms. Maybe one PC runs off to use the outhouse. When they all come back together, the question that should be on everybody's minds is everyone really themselves? When everyone thinks that everyone else might be a doppelganger and they start reenacting John Carpenter's The Thing, you know you've done your job properly. These things are the twisted minds and bodies of people who, well, got lost in the Shadowfell. They combine body horror with the abject terror of not being able to find your way home. Have you ever gotten lost somewhere? Maybe you were a kid and got separated from your parents in a crowded store, or you took a wrong turn somewhere and couldn't find your way back home. If you've ever been lost, you know that it's a terrifying experience. That sort of thing happened a lot more before GPS became a thing. But anyways, characters who wander around in the Shadowfell long enough might encounter these creatures shambling out of shadowy recesses. Their silhouettes look almost normal at first until their four pincer arms unfold as it readies its embrace. The twisted creature races toward them and just grabs on for dear life, sobbing uncontrollably and squeezing tight. Any attempts to dislodge the lost just make it squeeze tighter because it does not want to let you go. You are a beacon in its mind. You are its only hope of finding its way back to whatever it thinks civilization is, and it just does not want to let go. And it will not let go until you die, of course. So go ahead and throw a handful of these Dead Space-looking things at your party the next time they're wandering through the lands of the Shadowfell, and see how they react to sobbing enemies that just want a hug. These little things are the closest Mind Flayers get to having pets. They're the guard dogs of the Illithid realm. And at CR2, with only 21 hit points and an AC of 12, they don't look dangerous on the surface, but they can hit way above their pay grade. With a save or suck ability that can reduce a creature's intelligence to 0 and incapacitate it, and yet another ability that lets them teleport into the brain of that incapacitated creature, immediately killing it, by the way, these things can kill high-level characters just as easy as low-level ones. Imagine walking into a room with 3 or 4 of these things, each one ready to force an intelligence saving throw on you. You better hope that you roll higher on initiative and that you can cut them down before they even get a turn. But forget about walking into a room with these things, like that would ever happen. An Intellect Devourer can sense any creature with an intelligence score of 3 or higher from 300 feet away, so there's no surprising them. They've got an intelligence of 12, so they can think and reason better than the average person. These two things together mean that they'll be planning an ambush for you when you're still 300 feet out, and with a +6 on their stealth score, they're liable to pull it off. And after they get you, they'll use your body to lure others to their squid-faced masters. So if you find yourself in the dark halls of an Illithid spaceship, just assume you're being tracked and your brain's on the menu. The Bagman isn't a creature with an official stat block. He's actually an example used to illustrate how you can put elements of horror together to create a uniquely nightmarish creature, but that lack of a stat block might help to make him all the scarier. He's a boogeyman of sorts, an ex-adventurer who got lost in a bag of holding and was transformed by the extraplanar magic in there. Now every night, he climbs out of a random bag of holding somewhere in the world to look for his home. If he doesn't find his home, which he never will, he'll abduct a nearby sleeping person and leave a trinket in their place. The true horror of the Bagman isn't in what he can do, but rather where he comes from. If the party's own gear isn't safe, then what is? Bags of holding are practically standard adventuring gear, but who really knows what's in those things and what they're connected to? The inside of them is almost totally unknown, and it's the fear of the unknown and the violation of our personal space and property that the Bagman taps into. Just imagine an ongoing plot thread in which, at every inn the party sleeps at, one of the tenants disappears. In their place is a thimble, or a button, or a spoon. Some piece of junk that's been traded for the life of somebody at every inn the party stops at. When the party finally starts to get suspicious, they wake one night to the sound of something being dragged across the floor. They sit up and see a pair of feet being pulled into their bag of holding, and the bag sealing itself up afterwards. They'll either throw that bag away and swear off bags of holding altogether, or they'll start off on quite the adventure to figure out what the hell is in their bag. When some vampires are near death, they turn into mist in an attempt to get back to their hidey holes. And if they can't get back to safety, those vampires become stuck in their mist form, losing their minds and their identities to the overwhelming thirst. Their forms become locked in as vapor, but their hunger rages on. Alright, picture this. Your party's traveling along a winding country road with some low-level NPCs that they've been asked to protect. They've been traveling all day and the sun sinks down low on the horizon. They get off the road and they set up camp in a nearby field. They set up a watch and everybody else beds down for the night. Darkness falls. The temperature drops. Fog rolls in. Gentle snores give chorus to the cricket's nocturnal symphony. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the mist turns pink. By the end of the first watch, the once silvery gray mist has turned a deep crimson. When the watchman goes to wake up the others, he finds the group's NPC charges dead and covered in their own blood. It seeped out of their eyes and their pores and now floats in the air around the party. The mist itself is draining them of their life's blood. This is the vampiric mist at work. Once it's drained enough blood from the people within its area, the mist becomes saturated and actually rains the very blood that it drained. Vampiric mist is a great lead-in for when your party enters a dangerous area. It's not a difficult monster to defeat, but it does serve as a great signpost that reads, "Danger ahead." Because if you're coming to an area where even the mist is trying to kill you, what the heck else is there? I do have one gripe with the vampiric mist though. It should be immune to non-magical weapons. It's freaking mist. I mean, you try cutting mist with a knife and let me know how it goes. And that's our top 10. If you want more scary stuff, check out our original horror adventures over at lunchbreakheroes.com, and please subscribe and consider supporting Rory's Racing over on Patreon. I'll see you next time.